Race and the Priesthood and Temple Ban. Mormonism's doctrines and theology regarding the withholding of the priesthood from people of color is a deeply troubling and regrettable chapter in LDS history. The policy prohibiting people of color from receiving the priesthood or being able to enter the temple was instituted by Brigham Young in 1852, and it formally set in motion a policy that would bar individuals of African descent from receiving the priesthood and participating fully in church ordinances and rituals. Brigham Young, the second president of the LDS Church, initiated the policy in 1852 when he stated, "Now I tell you what I know, when the mark was put upon Cain, Abel's children was in all probability young. The Lord told Cain that he should not receive the blessings of the priesthood, nor his seed, until the last of the posterity of Abel had received the priesthood, until the redemption of the earth. If there never was a prophet or apostle of Jesus Christ spoke it before, I tell you, this people that are commonly called Negroes are the children of old Cain. I know they are. I know that they cannot bear rule in the priesthood, for the curse on them was to remain upon them until the residue of the posterity of Michael and his wife received the blessings. The seed of Cain would have received had they not been cursed, and hold the keys of the priesthood until the times of the restitution shall come, and the curse be wiped off from the earth, and from Michael's seed, then Cain's seed, will be had in remembrance, and the time come when that curse should be wiped off." As you can see, Brigham clearly tells you he knows these things under the authority of him being a prophet, and he imposes that the African race is, in fact, the seed of Cain, that they cannot have the priesthood, cannot go to the temple, cannot receive the saving ordinances, and that such cannot be changed until all of God's Caucasian children have had the chance to receive the priesthood. All that because a man had his own racism and bigotry. We believe in Mormonism that our faith is led by prophets, seers, and revelators. Latter-day Saints specifically, and Mormons generally, have been taught to allow the words of the prophets to supersede their own conscience. And we have been taught that it is sin and wrong to criticize our leaders. And yet he was wrong, and he was racist, and it easily could have been fixed quickly had the next leader in line actually had God communicate with him. But no, John Taylor was unable to discern the voice of the Lord on something so serious as the salvation of, the fair treatment of, restoring dignity to, preventing the harm and trauma of an entire segment of humans who were being maligned and mistreated because of the color of their skin, and not just him, but the rest of his first presidency and the quorum of the 12 apostles. And then the same thing for Wilford Woodruff, Lorenzo Snow, Joseph F. Smith, Heber J. Grant, George Albert Smith, David O. McKay, Joseph Fielding Smith, Harold B. Lee, and finally Spencer W. Kimball, who rescinds the policies around it, but lacks the moral courage to explain their error and to apologize. The church leadership is unable to own it, to be responsible for it, and not until 2013 do they finally take the first steps in doing such, when the church in its gospel topic, Essay on Race, states, "Today, the church disavows the theories advanced in the past, that black skin is a sign of divine disfavor or curse, or that it reflects on righteous actions in a pre-mortal life, that mixed-race marriages are a sin, or that blacks or people of any other race or ethnicity are inferior in any way to anyone else. Church leaders today unequivocally condemn all racism, past and present, in any form. But very few recognize that while they have disavowed the theories imposed as doctrines behind the ban, the church left themselves room to continue to impose that the ban itself still came from God. And Elder Oaks admits as much when he said, "I studied the reasons being given and could not feel confirmation of the truth of any of them. As part of my prayerful study, I learned that in general, the Lord rarely gives reasons for the commandments and directions he gives to his servants." Here is Elder Oaks imposing still in 2018 that the ban itself came from God, when every historical data point imposes that the ban was just as much the racist idea of an early leader as was the theories behind it. The church, from 1852 to the present moment, continues to justify this policy of exclusion by promoting racist ideologies in the past that portrayed people of African descent as inferior and cursed. We taught that individuals with black skin were descendants of Cain and were marked with a curse as a result of their supposed lack of valiance in the premortal life. This belief in a premortal hierarchy of worthiness and righteousness contributed to the marginalization and discrimination of black Mormons within the church. Throughout the years, various church leaders perpetuated and reinforced these racist teachings, further entrenching the policy of priesthood restriction. Multiple church leaders perpetuated these racist ideas, including George Albert Smith, who in a First Presidency correspondence with Dr. Lowry Nelson, as well as in the 1949 First Presidency letter, acting as prophet, reinforced that the doctrine of prohibiting people of color from priesthood, the temple, and ordinances is hinged to other doctrines involving curses and premortal valiancy. LDS Apostle Mark E. Peterson stated, "If that Negro is faithful all his days, he can and will enter the celestial kingdom. He will go there as a servant, but he will get a celestial resurrection. He will get a place in the celestial glory." And even with those policies behind us, the current leadership is unable to be directly accountable to the mistakes of the institution they lead, and still to this day give cover for the racism of the past. The racism from Brigham Young all the way to Spencer Kimball is itself bad enough. But let's be clear. The crux of this issue is that while prophets assure us with their words that they are the conduits for God's messages, while they tell us they only teach the truth, while they assure us we can trust them, this issue alone, with hundreds of others, imposes that they don't always teach the truth, that they struggle more than the world at times to hear God or discern His word. They failed in this instance and in so many others to get doctrine right. They are capable of teaching false doctrine at the expense of hurting large segments of God's children. That at times, the worst thing we can do is trust that they got it right. The LDS Church's history of racism and discrimination regarding race and priesthood highlights the fallibility of its leaders and the dangers of unquestioning obedience to authority. The fact that successive prophets, seers, and revelators upheld and defended racist policies for over a century and continued to justify an excuse, such, even to the present, raises serious questions about their ability to discern truth and act as mouthpieces of God, and whether they are worthy of the trust they impose we place in them.